A crazy thing happened to me when we were landing in Philadelphia.
What
That has
happened?
never happened to me. I had a carry-on bag, and when I was boarding the plane, the overhead compartments that were directly above my seat were full. So I kind of saw that as I was approaching my seat and
You started taking
stowed
shit
it.
out to put yours up.
Yeah, I just started throwing other people's stuff. No, I just stowed it like a few rows ahead of me, and then we're deplaning in Philly, and I am kind of just paranoid. So I have my eyes on my bag, and I notice this woman kind of futzing with it, and I'm thinking, oh, she must have something behind there. I hope I didn't like squish something of hers behind my bag. And then she pulls my bag down onto the seat, and I'm thinking, wow, I guess something was really trapped back there. And then she takes my bag off the seat and puts it on the ground, and I'm like, I mean, does
How
she need
nice
to
of her.
climb up? Yeah, does she need to climb up on the seat? Is this what's happening now? And then she takes the handle out and starts to turn like she's walking off the plane. And I'm like, excuse me, what are you doing? And she's like, I just getting off the plane. And I'm like, well, is that your bag? And she goes, I think so. I go, well, because I'm 100% sure it's my bag. And then she stops and gets this very thick accent all of a sudden. And she looks down at the bag, at the handle, and looks up at me and goes like, Samsonite? Like, is that your name?
Calvin Klein?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's what you're going to go with? You're going to pretend like... And long story short, this woman exited the plane with no bag.
She was trying to take your bag.
She was 100% stealing my bag.
Wow.
I mean,
that's crazy.
Right? Like, you buy a plane ticket and then you're just like, meh, maybe I'll just grab an extra bag on the way off this thing.
Did you follow her off and go, security?
I didn't, because it was just like...
You were in shock.
I was a little bit in shock, and I was like, is there a 2% chance that there's a plausible explanation? Which I've since, after thinking through it and talking through it with many people, have decided there really wasn't. But,
well,
I mean...
I feel like this is a good time for me to confess something to you.
You steal a lot of bags, don't you?
Well, a couple weeks ago, and I fly a lot, and I went to the restroom and then washed my hands. Didn't take more than 60 seconds, so I wasn't in there long. And as I went out, I grabbed my bag and I'm rolling it, and there's kind of carpet in the terminal, and I'm like, man, my bag isn't rolling right. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. And then I'm sitting down and I'm eating in a restaurant, obviously, and I get a phone call from a strange number and I ignore it. And then this same number calls me right back. And I have this preview thing on my phone where you can see them leaving you a message.
Yeah.
And the message is, hey,
asshole, answer the phone.
It's like, hey, man, you got my bag. I'm like, how could I have your bag? I go, I got my bag, and I look over and no, I don't. I do not have my bag. I have his bag. I rolled his whole bag out with me, and I'm like, oh my God. So I like call him back, and I'm like, I am so embarrassed, man. I am so sorry, And he's like, it's okay. I go, well, where are you at? He's like, I'm by the bathroom. And so anyway, I rolled it over. He was super cool, like very friendly. He didn't like punch me or anything, so I was grateful for that. But I've never done that ever, even once. So I was pretty embarrassed. But
what I didn't realize is we were going to be opening this episode with a multi-pronged PSA. Number one, don't be the thief. And number two, know that there are a lot of thieves out there. And just general idiots as well.
All right, well, hey, Vegas is coming up. I'm fired up about that. You and I always try to get together. Hopefully we'll get to do that this time. When are you going out?
100%. We get in. I get in Saturday morning.
Okay. All right. I'm going Thursday, so I'll be there a little bit earlier. I think it's going to be slow traffic there. By the way, if you're listening to this, I'll be at Schiffman. Please come see me. C 1554. Love to chat, say hello, but I think we'll have some time to chat. I think Vegas market's going to be slow from what I keep hearing from people. How about you? What's the buzz?
I'm hearing much of the same, yeah. Some people who I'm just kind of really surprised won't be there. I mean, because there
Oh
were
yeah.
people who you would 100% expect to be there. But yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't help that the industry seems to be down. That we're getting new numbers to confirm what we all have been experiencing on that.
God, we're going to do a show on that. You and I were both exchanging text messages with good old Dave Perry because of the ISPA numbers. He wrote that story. So we're going to cover that in the next episode, I believe. But my goodness, is that ugly? Wow.
Yeah, so that probably doesn't help, although a lot of people probably already made up their minds even before those numbers came out. And summer market obviously always slower, but this year, for whatever reason, I'm just hearing a lot of no's.
No's. Betting News Now, our media partner, thanks to those guys, they have a event going on. Did you get that on your calendar?
Oh, yeah, I do have that on my calendar. Yeah.
So
I'll be
let's
looking
talk
forward to
about that and hype that up a little bit. They're doing some awards. I've been to this event before. It was really cool.
Yeah, I've not been to
that?
it before.
You have the day and time?
It's on Monday at like 4:30, I think.
Monday at
4:00.
4:30.
Yeah.
Okay. And where is it at?
It's somewhere up in the upper floors of B, if I recall.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think Serta is the sponsor of it this year. I think they did it last time too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, B16, 4:30 to 5:30 is what I have it on my calendar.
All right. Well, I'll be at that. Hopefully we'll see you guys there.
Yeah, by the way, and I think we don't want to be too negative about the prospects for this market. I'm hoping that there's going to be more people than we expect. Hopefully we'll be pleasantly surprised. And,
well, we're not going to sway
if nothing
anyone.
else, there's going to be plenty of people who are there with product, and that's always interesting to see and talk about, even if the hallways are quiet.
Listen, I love going because of the conversations. I mean, product, I'm sure if you're a merchant, that's important, but man, the conversations you have in the hallway. And July Market's kind of cool for that because you're not as busy. So you can have some meaningful discussions with people. So I like it for that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm weird that way. I guess I love going to Vegas. I love Market. I love seeing friends in the industry. It's pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to it. And by the time this releases, it will be Friday, Mike, of Market. So anyway, well, let's jump in. This is, if you're just tuning in, it's Mark and Mike. This is the Wake Up Call podcast. We are glad you are here. And boy, do we have a topic for today, don't we, Michael?
We do. We do. Why don't you go ahead and tee it up? You're actually, of the two of us, you're certainly closer to this topic than I am, I would say. And so I'm going to be leaning on you for...
Yeah. Well, by the way, did you know that we have our first sponsor?
I did know that, yeah.
Well, it's Imagine.io, and we'll get into that next week, but wanted to give them a shout out. We're not ready to talk about them a lot yet, but I happen to be a customer of theirs and am very happy, but they're doing really cool stuff with graphic images. Back in the day, you used to have to shoot all of your mattresses in lifestyle settings and studio time and moving product in and out. And now with the CG tech, imagery is, it's just changed everything. I mean, I feel bad for the photographers out there, but they do a great job, and we'll intro them more next week. But thanks to Imagine.io. Appreciate you guys being the very first sponsor of the Wake Up Call pod. Okay, so Somnigroup on the march, man. So they buy... it first started out, they were in just Tempur-Pedic, right? And then they come in and they buy Sealy, Stearns & Foster, their big first acquisition.
Really rewinding the clock a lot there.
Well, just taking a trip through history. And then they go in and they buy a mattress firm. Of course, that's a huge acquisition. And then, as if that wasn't enough, they have purchased or are in the process of purchasing Leggett Platt. So I spent 9 years there. So in full transparency to this audience, I spent 9 years with them as the segment VP of marketing. And I have a deep affection for that company and for Carl Glassman, their CEO. Carl was on a podcast with you. That was a good show, and that's on Mike It Up. I encourage everyone to go listen to that. Carl had a lot of great things to say. But so anyway, Mike, this acquisition. And so it kind of feels a little bit like they're just on the march, doesn't it, Somnigroup? And really, you look at 3Zs, they've gone vertical, a lot of stuff John and those guys have done, very smart. And with TSI buying Leggett Platt, I mean, Leggett Platt at one point was a $5.5 billion company. They're not that big anymore, but, and to help Tempur-Pedic become vertical and cost advantaged in the market with innersprings. They've got their own foam factories, obviously, with Tempur, but ECS, Elite Comfort Solutions, gives them another entirely new dimension in terms of the types of phones. The Petersons are brilliant chemists and phone makers, and that's kinda how that business was born. So, yeah, I think it's a really interesting play, for TSI and Somnigroup, and I think that it's gonna make them, as if they need it, right? It's gonna make them even more dangerous in the market. What say you?
Oh, well, 100% agree. If
Yeah.
there's a way to agree even more than 100%, I would agree.
Yeah, right.
I mean, by owning Mattress Firm, they're already in a position where they have a ton of obviously leverage in the retail channel, but also information in the retail channel. Information about not just how their products are doing, but how some of their biggest competitors are doing through that channel. They also are now going to have similar information about their competitors coming from the supply side of the equation, and also similar amounts of outsized leverage as it relates to the supply side. So yeah, it's going to be an incredibly powerful position for them.
So, let's attack this a little bit in terms of why is it a good move for TSI? And for anyone who doesn't know, Leggett& Platt is vertical in coil manufacturing, right? And they have a facility in Sterling, Illinois, and they melt steel, Mike. So you go to
Yeah,
this place. I want to tell you, I'm going to get this wrong, but their electric bill, okay, used to be like $750,000 a month or something crazy like that because it requires a lot of energy to melt steel, right?
yeah,
But when you melt steel and you turn that into billets and then billets into rod and then rod into wire and wire into a coil and coil into an inner spring, that is going all the way back to scrap, right?
yeah.
And so then you have all the conversion costs along the way. And then you consider Elite Comfort Solutions and you consider all the box spring componentry that they make. You consider all the furniture hardware they make. They're in aerospace, they're in carpet padding. So they have a way to get rid of waste, even. So it helps them being even more efficient in that way. They
Hmm.
have a massive domestic footprint in terms of manufacturing and distribution networks. They are international. At one point, they had 19,000 employees all across the world. I traveled the world with Leggett and spent a lot of time in different countries learning about the mattress industry as a representative of Leggett. So that was kind of cool for me. But they're in a lot of different countries, so they have those contacts and connections also, which
Hmm.
also gives them an advantage. But so man, I mean, if you are vertical and you're saving yourself that kind of money on your raw material cost, and then that gives you even more money, Mike, to put into advertising, which gives you more leverage in the market, gives you
Sure.
more money as a cost advantage to give yourself better margin or therefore even reduce your price, increasing product value against your competition. And
Sure.
so it's a
Or
big
just show
deal.
earnings
And
growth.
or
I mean, that's
just drop it to the bottom line.
just
That's
drop it right to the
exactly
bottom
right.
line. Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, that's what I
Which is
think this
probably
is
more likely, right?
really what this is about is when you are a public company of the scale that Somnigroup is, you have to continue showing growth. And they're in an industry that at the
Hmm.
top line level has made that very difficult. Not only is the industry not growing, but also they're a huge percentage of that industry. And in fact, units, the segment of the market that they're part of, that more premium segment of the market where most of their money is made, is under assault from commodity products sold through what I call blind channels, the large e-commerce platforms and warehouse clubs and so forth. So lots of units are being lost to those blind channels, and TSI is trying to keep showing growth in an environment where there's very little growth to be found. They've been able to steal some share. That's basically what it's come down to, is they've had to do that to show growth in the past few years. But once they kind of started to reach a saturation point where that too became very challenging, if not mathematically less feasible, they then had to look for other ways to show growth. And the first thing they did was they bought Mat Firm. And now all of a sudden they were able to extract a bunch of one-time synergies from that
Yes.
transaction. It's basically like, where can I remove costs? Essentially, I can extract all the profit from the retail sale instead of leaving 50% of that profit for my retail wholesale partner. All that sticks with me. So then those one-time synergies helped show growth for this year, the year we're in now, even maybe some of last year, if I recall. I can't remember when it actually closed. And the next opportunity to continue to show growth is to engineer a similar move going upstream in the value chain to the supply side. And with components, it's as simple as, okay, instead of supplying some of these components or sourcing some of these components from other companies where they keep the profit, let's say, from the manufacturing of those products, we will now essentially have that in-house. All that profit drops to our bottom line. And that's one of the ways they can extract synergies. There's other ways they can extract synergies, like, hey, we don't have to pay for salespeople to sell stuff to TSI anymore. That's certainly not a cost Leggett will bear. And then, not just to mention, there's other overhead synergies, in the back office functions of a company that probably can be streamlined as well when you're just combining two entities like that. So there's going to be synergies there as well. And all of that is going to enable them to continue to show growth, at least for some period of time, just on the basis of a transaction without having to actually grow the top line per se.
Yeah, and let's not forget too the benefit to Somnigroup in terms of technology and innovation. Like, you don't think of Leggett as a tech company, but I'm going to tell you, man, when it comes to a geometry of a coil, the physics of a coil, the ability to manipulate a coil and a support system, their idea center, everything they have in terms of intellectual property and knowledge in foam, in the chemistry of foam. There's a lot. They have an aerospace group. They have, things that they're doing in the automotive space that translates into the betting space. So they got some really smart guys, a lot of engineers there.
Sure.
So there's a lot that, that Somni Group can tap into there. But let's change direction here a little bit. And let's talk about what's the impact of it going to be to Leggett. And I have some thoughts there because, I want everyone to know, like, I think there's going to be some difficult things happen with Leggett. I don't know that Somni Group don't know anything about what they're going to do with Leggett, but I don't imagine they need certain parts of Leggett.
Mm-hmm.
They'll probably sell off some of the different business units that they have, which makes sense. And, there was a lot of controversy or commentary about, strike price and the buy price and all that. And I know Carl Glassman, you had him on your show. I worked for Carl for 9 years. And I want to make it clear that that guy is probably the best mentor I've ever had as a leader. I consider him to be a good friend, and his wife, Kathy, is amazing. And Carl did what, his, he accepted the responsibility that as a CEO, there's certain things you can and can't do, and you have to negotiate in the best interest of the shareholder for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that he had the employees of Leggett and Platt at the center of every decision he made there, because that's the kind of guy he is. He knows thousands of Leggett and Platt employees by their first name, probably their last name, knows about their families. He's that kind of guy. And I respect him a lot. And so I think there's good things that are going on for them with the transaction. I think there's probably some hard things that they had to do for the transaction. So I think it's going to change Leggett drastically. And for all the people at Leggett listening to this, man, I feel for you too, because I'm sure all the questions you get constantly about what it's going to be and what's going to happen. And there might be some question about, your future with the company. So I don't like that for those people either, but just part of it, man, part of business, right?
Yeah. And I want to just add to what you said about Carl, and I obviously agree with all of that. But in addition, I think from my standpoint, he's always also been someone who understood his role at the helm of Leggett made him a very strong influence on things that could affect the health of the category.
Yeah.
And I think even just as an example, some of the stuff that he supported you on that you were doing had a lot of things that could help grow the category. He was willing to put money behind things that could just lift all boats. And I think he's been that kind of a leader. Even just recently, what we were talking to him a lot about when he was on our podcast was the stuff he's doing with regards to calling out products that are not passing fire retardancy tests and that are basically making their way into our marketplace without having to comply with the laws of our country.
A lot of the ecom product. And what about product testing too, Mike? Didn't he tested quality and a lot of it failed that as well?
We didn't talk about that. We only talked
I'm
about
pretty
that
sure they
was,
did.
well, he talked about that was their original intent. And then
Mhm.
what they discovered was that, wow, there's even a more obvious issue here at hand,
Mhm.
and more dangerous issue at hand with this fire retardancy. And they thought, let's highlight this first. So I believe that they, at the point in time we recorded that podcast, at least, had every intention of continuing to release more information about those tests. But I don't know that they ever really quite got to that point. I think that was around the time that the acquisition announcement came in. And I think other priorities took hold at that point. But nonetheless, my main thing was that this is something that he took on himself to say, hey, look, this is bad for the whole industry if we're not forcing all companies to abide by the same rules. And it's also bad for consumers because it's frankly dangerous. So,
Well, when I was there, we were getting our brains beat in by Chinese imports, and they were dumping inner springs into our market below our cost to produce. And like I said earlier in the show, we are as much of a low cost provider of inner springs as you could be because we melt steel. We're vertical back to melting steel back then.
yeah,
And people were really critical because we went at them with, was it, I can't remember the government agency, but to try to get tariffs put on inner springs. And then the manufacturers, bedding producers, were upset with us because, we're trying to put tariffs on the Chinese imports. And, they were getting cheap raw materials. And I'm like, guys, I get that. But we're shutting down factories in the USA. American families are losing their jobs because China is illegally dumping product into our market, and it's
yeah,
not right. And then when finished beds started getting dumped, then a lot of the manufacturers were like, well, that's not right. I'm like, well, it's no different when they were dumping inner springs. But
yeah,
Carl, we went through a lot there. Matter of fact, I started writing a blog back then because I was so frustrated by people attacking us for doing what we were supposed to do, which is protect our business.
yeah,
And so Carl's always been an advocate for not just Leggett, but the industry, because he
right.
saw where it was going. It wasn't going to just impact us, it was going to impact everyone. And we knew what was coming. We knew finished beds were next. And that's exactly what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's exactly the point I was making. Is I think he's always
Yeah.
taken that role as sort of a steward of the industry very seriously, and I think he's done an excellent job in that role. And I think the next point I wanted to raise on that was just that I think in this situation here, it's been a lot probably harder to manage all the different constituents, right? Like you
Oh,
said,
boy.
there's shareholders, there's the employees, and we haven't even gotten to the rest of the industry, right? And not everyone's interests are always going to be aligned in all these things. And so, especially in a situation like this, so that had to have been a really tough situation for him to manage. And
Yeah. Because you're trying to keep everyone happy, and it's,
yeah,
and especially because of who he is. Like, there's a
yeah,
lot of guys in business who would have been like, I'm going to cash a check. It's going to be great. No worries. But that's not how he's built at all. He's
right.
carrying the burden and the load, and his heart was heavy, I'm sure, in parts of that. But I know that Carl feels, I say I know, he drove a negotiation to do the very best he could for all parties. That's what I want to say with
Yeah.
certainty. I know the kind of person he
I have
is.
no
Yeah.
doubt in that as well. And
Well, I would also like to say he can be a major pain in the ass on top of all of the good stuff, though. So I just want to make it very clear that he's not
don't try to
all.
do what we did to you, where we just
No,
turn this
no,
into like, no,
I feel like I should give everyone a full view of who he is. He could, yeah, I'm in therapy for some of the ribbing he would. No, I'm kidding. All right. Well, let's talk about this then, Mike. Also, what is the impact? We talked about the impact of Leggett. We talked about the impact of Somnigroup. How about the impact of the industry? Like, what does that look like? Because now, everyone else is going to have to compete. If we were laughing last episode about a 500-pound gorilla kind of being a weak and measly gorilla, and
yeah.
and if Somnigroup was an 800-pound gorilla, then what are they now?
Yeah. I think it's kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where you already had a position where manufacturers were having to sell to their biggest competitor in a sense, right? If they're trying to sell into mat firm, and retailers are faced with the prospect of carrying products from their biggest competitor, because mat firm is every retailer's biggest competitor, no question. And So there was already that dynamic, and now you have this dynamic that's affecting some of those same companies. Well, now I'm competing against one of my biggest suppliers, and what tensions does that create for me? You know, what leverage do they now have over me that my supplier didn't have before, and that I don't love them having? And what information do they have now about my business? And
You
so
make a good point there. Yeah.
that's all just new advantages for Somnigroup. And by the way, that's not me suggesting that anyone at Somnigroup is going to take advantage of these dynamics for nefarious purposes, but these just are the dynamics. And so they will be
Sure.
having this information. Like, the logical thing for them to do will be to take advantage of this additional operating and negotiating leverage that they have. It would be almost economically irrational for them not to.
And irresponsible. And by the way, how
Yeah.
brilliant are they, honestly? Like, you were talking about that, and you know what it made me think of? To recap kind of what you said, they are the biggest competitor for everyone in the bedding producer space. They are
Mm-hmm.
the biggest competitor to everyone that is a retailer in the mattress
Mm-hmm.
industry. And they are the biggest competitor to anyone in the component side of the business that sells components that compete with Leggett& Platt. So
Yeah.
that's really pretty strong strategy if you're those guys. And of course, they're going to use every bit of leverage that they can. So I want you to think about this too, in terms of that leverage, the information. If you're like, when Somnigroup buys Mat Firm, right? Then there was some question, oh wow, I wonder how retailers are going to take that. Are they going to drop, TSI products now because they're not, I'm not going to compete with I'm not going to buy from my biggest competition now with Mat Firm and just fund, their continued growth throughout the category. But if you're a retailer, you've got that crack cocaine of the Tempur-Pedic brand. We talked about last episode, the preference of that brand. And they've
Mm-hmm.
done a solid job with Sealy. That was always the biggest brand back before Tempur-Pedic got in the game. And then Stearns and Foster, a strong luxury brand. And so they weren't going to be irrational and throw them out, right? Their retail business is benefiting from that. So less inclined to make an emotional decision. Well, I'm not, they're like, well, yeah, we're making money, so we'll just ride this out and see what happens. However, if you're a bedding manufacturer, that's different because they're not doing anything for you, right? So there's no reason for you not to move away from Leggett if they own them now. And so I think that they're going to have, and they may not care, Mike, honestly, like their volume may be big enough, it won't matter. But I'll tell you this, at Leggett& Platt, very few conversations I was ever involved in where we're talking about dollars. Most of the conversations were around units, and because units drive the efficiency of that business and the profitability of that business. Big
Mm-hmm.
machines, long runs, changeover cost money, like, just, the classic manufacturing model.
Yeah.
But if they start seeing some fallout, and I'm sure they did the math, they knew it going in, but manufacturers are not going to want to buy, a lot of them anyway, aren't going to want to buy from their biggest competition to fund their growth, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
different. I think they're going to see a different reaction from the category when it comes to this acquisition. What do you
And by
think?
different, you mean that basically
There's a bigger downside.
Leggett's market power will be less sticky than Tempur's market power was with the retail channel.
Yeah, there's no brand preference for Leggett. I think people
Yeah.
have done business, I mean, with Leggett, and they have an affection for Leggett because that good business and relationships that go back, a long ways. And I'm sure all that's true. But, there's no value to a bedding brand to buy a branded Leggett component. They can buy innersprings from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if your choice is to buy it from your biggest competition or to buy it from Leggett, now Leggett still has great service. They have great prices. So there's a lot of ways they can keep people under the tent, as
Great
they say.
economies of scale. Yep.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's a lot of competition out there in coils, and I think manufacturers are gonna
Yeah.
be more inclined to make a decision that will probably hurt it. But like I said, TSI has done all that math, I'm sure, and they're probably like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'm
Like,
sure
we have
they've
so
baked
much
in
business to,
some
yeah.
loss there. Yeah. But I think, yeah, to echo what you're saying, I agree with it completely. I think that we're probably going to see more. This will be more of a boon for other component suppliers than the mat firm acquisition was for other manufacturers, other producers.
No, I think that's exactly right, and I think it's gonna
And
be,
boon might be too strong a word, by the way. I don't know if this is going to be a what you'd categorize as a boon, but I think the component suppliers will have more of an edge as a result of this to sell off of.
well, I think it is gonna be a boon for
You
them.
do?
I
Okay.
went to the IS well, I do because I went to the ISPA show, and I know people in the innerspring business, friends who sell innersprings. I know friends that sells foam.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the conversation we were having is they're very busy
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people in the market and they're shopping and they're looking. I don't know what it ends up being.
Yeah.
If they end up moving away, my guess is many of them will. But,
Yeah.
the other part of it is
Bringing the stuff in house.
exactly where I was going. But, Leggett stubbed their toe big time during COVID. Like they had a real hard time with that. A lot of people did. So being fair to Leggett, but, and then when that happened and they couldn't keep up with supply, they pissed a lot of people off. And so what happened was a lot of people started going out and buying machines. Leon
Mm-hmm.
Rue coilers, bringing them in, running them on their own, finding other supply chains in Poland and other countries.
Yep.
And so a lot of that was already starting to happen. So now, I think that's probably, even the machinery guys are probably getting phone calls. So I think people
Yeah.
are
That's a good
trying
point.
to adjust their their place in the category.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm surprised how more and more, even before the Leggett announcement, I was surprised how many more people were already starting to make their own coils. Pour their own foam is even a bigger investment, but I'm surprised to see how many people were doing that. And, we talked about 3Z does that. They make their own coils and they've invested a lot in a foam pouring facility in their factory in Phoenix. I'm not sure if they're doing that in the Sutherland factory that they acquired, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're already going down that path there as well. I've been to other much smaller manufacturing facilities where they're also making their own springs, and it's just part of how they make product now. They've verticalized that part of it. So I think you'll probably see more of that as well.
I think you will. Let's talk a minute about, if you're Somnigroup, man, you have for the first time, I think in a long time, there is a real in the way it feels to me. I don't know if this is accurate, but you look at 3Zs. I love what John's doing with those guys, and especially Helix. Man, they're coming on. They're spending a bunch of money, and I'd say they are the bright star in the industry. It's not Tempur, it's not Sealy, it's not Stearns, it's Helix. And I would say in addition to that, it's probably Avocado. And, I sit on calls with other retailers and other folks, and those are always the shining stars of the conversation. And then, if you're Somnigroup, you see them coming up, right? And then you look at what John's done in terms of verticalization. And, he's done a lot to do kind of the same thing. And so if you're Somnigroup, you're probably like, okay, we need to build a bigger moat. We got a pretty good one now, but we have some competitors coming up doing some pretty good smart things. And so, I'm not saying it was in response to what 3Z's is
Yeah,
doing, but they got to be
that's
paying
a
attention to
stretch.
it. Well,
I
no,
think, I
but
mean,
but
I
believe me, they're
agree.
paying attention to it for sure.
I don't doubt it, but to position
Yeah.
it as a defensive move is a stretch. I mean, it was by no means a defensive move that they needed to do.
No, I would hope that there's not that much arrogance for them to think that they can't be, taken down a couple notches. So I would say, knowing them like I do, they look at everybody as a threat.
Fair enough. But what 3Z has done to put themselves in such a strong position relative to TSI or Somnigroup or whatever we call them now is much more a function of how they've marketed their products than how they make them. I mean, what has made them the darling of the category is the fact that they've had the most effective, over the last couple of years, the most effective marketing of any company in the category. And they've done it really honestly with the exact opposite strategy of what I talked about with regards to Sleep Number last week. With Sleep Number, we talked about how they're principally trying to grab people top of funnel, people who are not yet in the market for a mattress, bring them directly into their ecosystem and close them before they ever go into that like comparative research mode. Well, Helix is the opposite. They do a little bit of top of funnel, but by and large, their marketing is about being everywhere that that consumer goes once they decide that they are in market for this product. And I can turn that same data point that I referenced last week. I can give you the flip side of it. The one I referenced last week, if you didn't listen to last week's episode yet, was that of all the thousands of consumers that we talk to, Sleep Number almost never comes up in
Right.
somebody's list of their consideration set. If they're looking at anything other than Sleep Number, they're not looking at Sleep Number. Because basically, once they enter the sort of research phase, Sleep Number's products and their brand and their information is not generally present. It has not been, at least. And so they end up focusing on whoever is there. Well, who's there? 3Z is there. They're there with all their different brands. And as a result, the flip side of that statement would be that, like, in the last couple of years, it's rare that I hear a consideration set that doesn't include one 3Z product. And that's a function of how successful they've been in that style of marketing. And that's what's put them in such a strong position, I think. And Avocado has also done a good job with that. But those are the things more so than the fact that they make their own springs or pour their own foam. That's more of a back-end efficiency that's helped their margins and helped them fund some of that marketing.
Well,
But
that's what I was going to say. I want to push a little bit on that, because if you are more efficient and you're making better margin, it allows you to be better on the front part of your business and buy more advertising, buy more marketing, and drive more people to your brands. So they work together for sure.
yeah, but Tempur-Pedic has way more marketing dollars
Yeah.
than 3Z
Oh, yeah.
does. So it wasn't like, oh, they've got all this marketing because of the vertical integration they're doing. We need to have some more money for marketing. No. They have plenty of dollars. They just haven't quite spent it as efficiently as 3Z has. Although Tempur-Pedic's marketing has also been very good, by the way. I don't mean to.
Oh, yeah. For
When
sure.
I say Tempur-Pedic, I mean the whole
Sure.
company.
Well, you made a comment a little bit ago. I want to rewind to it and stress test that. You referred to Helix as the new darling of the industry. Is that like, do we just crown them like that?
I thought I was quoting you. I thought I was literally parroting back what you had said.
Maybe. I don't know. But I would tell you, I think they are. I was going to agree with the comment. I think that, TSI is still strong, obviously, but I would say Helix by far right now probably has more momentum than anyone.
Yeah, well, they have obviously a lot of upside. They've got a lot of potential to grow into retail because obviously they've barely penetrated
right now. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the math of how many people are searching for Helix or considering Helix versus how many stores already carry Helix in your area, that's all in their favor right now. Even though many more people might be looking for a Tempur-Pedic, that Tempur-Pedic product is already available in probably 50% of the doors in that market. So there's just less upside for the retailer, less upside for the brand because of the level of market penetration that Tempur already has relative to what 3Z has today. But that being said, again, I definitely do think that what they've done on the marketing side is creating interest in their products, and that does stand to benefit the retail channel, their retail partners, and that has certainly put them in high demand.
You have more visibility, Mike, than I do into the 3Z brands, and they have several. So Helix is at the top of that. Who would you say is, maybe in their portfolio of brands, like in second place for them in terms of how they go to market with it?
Probably Brooklyn Bedding, I would say.
Yep.
And then maybe like Bear, and then Lisa, maybe, is probably the order that I hear them. Oh, I'm forgetting, by the way, Birch also is
Birch,
kind
I
of
was going
part
to
of
say
the
Birch.
Helix.
Yeah.
It's sort of part of the Helix family of products, but yeah.
Lisa was so strong for so long. It was just red hot. And then it seemed like they settled back pretty substantially at one point. It seemed like it happened overnight to me, but.
Well, there was a whole backstory there.
Can you share?
Well,
I know a little bit, but not.
They were being promoted a lot by a site called Sleepopolis.
Yeah.
And then
Do they own Sleepopolis?
they did not own Sleepopolis. They were just being promoted a lot by Sleepopolis or on
I
Sleepopolis.
remember this better. Yeah, okay.
And then there was an acquisition of Sleepopolis by a group that turned out to be an acquisition, I guess, funded by a loan from Casper. And and then
Yeah, very
conveniently,
convoluted.
all
Yeah.
the references to Lisa disappeared pretty quickly after that. And
Let me guess.
that they
They
were
were
pointed to
now
Casper.
promoting Casper. Yeah.
Well, I
That's
think they
so
were
weird.
probably, I don't think Casper ever kind of benefited to the degree that Lisa was benefiting. I think they were generally, after that, they were distributed a little bit more evenly across different companies than just being pointed to one company the way they were before.
Mm.
So, but that was really, Lisa had ridden that wave and then, wrote it right down again afterwards. That was what I saw.
Well, they have a great 3Cs has a great portfolio. But anyway, so
There was a great, by the way, there was a great Fast Company article about that I can link to
oh
in the show
really?
notes. Yeah, if you weren't in the industry then, you probably haven't seen it, but if you were, it's still probably an interesting read, and I'll take you down memory lane with our show notes.
Cool. Well, this is if you're listening, dropping in now. This is Mark and Mike with the Wake Up Call podcast. We're glad you're listening, and we've been talking about Somnigroup buying Leggett and Platt. So hopefully you can catch the entire episode. Last week we were talking about the potential acquisition of Sleep Number by Sleep Country Canada. So if you missed it, go check that episode out. Which, by the way, I think that auction was supposed to happen yesterday. I looked
I
some
know.
things up, and I didn't see anything. Did you? I don't know if it
Me
happened or
neither.
not.
There's definitely been nothing in the news that I've seen. So yeah, I don't know what the status of that is. We'll have to report back in a future episode.
Yeah, so that's interesting. All right. Well, what did we miss today? Anything? Can you think of it?
Well, I'm sure we missed a ton. I hope
Oh,
we
yeah.
start getting some input from our listeners as to where we can go deeper, what we might have missed. We're happy to do corrections where we have misstated anything. But yeah, we can and will go deeper on all these things. But I think it's certainly a topic that we wanted to make sure we gave at least some high level thoughts to frame out our thinking on this for our listeners.
Yep, for sure. And we have a couple of thoughts for episodes coming up just to tease that a little bit. We'll do a Vegas market recap. I think that'll be fun to do, and we'll kind of bring Vegas back to you if you didn't go. And then we're also going to talk about those miserable ISPA numbers that just came out. It was ugly. And so we can talk about that. And that's really a bigger conversation, Mike, about the industry and the state of the industry. And you've done such a great job of being an advocate for the category in a lot of your talks at different events. And so I think that's going to be a great episode for people.
Well, hopefully we can get somebody from ISPA to be on that episode with us, where we can just get it straight from the horse's mouth as to how these numbers were put together, where they're supremely confident in them, where they might not be quite as confident, just kind of help us understand whatever context may be available around these numbers so that everyone can kind of take from them what they should.
Yep, for sure. All right. Well, some all-you-can-eat sushi sound good to you? Maybe get some stretchy pants packed away,
Could be.
Yeah.
That's another Vegas tradition.
Followed by a couple beers and karaoke, of course.
Well, hope to see some of you guys out there in Vegas. I'm looking forward to that. As Mark said, it's always fun to catch up with people in person. And so.
Yep, for sure. Come by, see me at Schiffman C1554. Look forward to seeing you that are there. And if not, we'll bring it back to you. As for now, that's us on the Wake Up Call Pod. Thanks for tuning in.
We're out.